When I was in that dark place, I didn't know what it was that I was dealing with. I just thought, yes, I felt depressed. It was an emotion, right? I was feeling low, so I must be just depressed. But I never ever connected depression to actually being a disorder. I just felt it was like any other emotion. And it wasn't until a friend called me out on my behavior, the way I was acting and just how I just wasn't present when I was present, if you know what I mean. And she asked me a simple question. Are you struggling with depression? And I thought for a minute, and I'm like, I don't know. I think so. And it was in that moment where it made me think, is there more to this depression thing than just feeling sad? And at that time, it really made me think. It really made me think, and I started, doing a little bit of research in terms of, this thing called depression. And it wasn't long before I realized, I'm not dealing with an emotion here, I'm dealing with a disorder. So the purpose of this video is twofold. Number one, we're going to talk about the different severities of this disorder called depression. And number two, we're going to talk about the symptoms, the primary symptoms that health professionals, medical professionals use to kind of gauge that depression severity. But first, hello, Jamie Dukes here, and welcome to Deep Well Motivation, where we share knowledge, perspectives, and actions to help motivate you to be the best you can be in your mental health. If you'd like to join us on our wellness journey, we upload 1 to 2 videos per week. So go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, and click the notification button so you don't miss a single upload. On this channel, there's hope always. So the more I thought about this whole depression thing, where I might be dealing with more than just an emotional issue here, being low all the time, I jumped into the research. I started going online, visiting different mental health association websites, downloaded a bunch of academic journals, trying to see what all the experts are saying about this whole depression thing. And based on all my research, I kind of compiled a summary in terms of, number one, what are the major primary symptoms of depression, and number two, how do you measure depression severity? Like when you think about, okay, yeah, I'm depressed, but how depressed are you? Can you actually measure the depression? And quite frankly, you can measure depression severity. And here I have it documented on the board. So the first thing we'll look at are the different severities of depression. So the 3 categories of depression, starting from least severe to most severe, begins with dysthymic disorder. Dysthymic disorder is a milder form of depression. Next, based on my research, I discovered this thing called minor depressive disorder. And the third one is major depressive disorder, and this is the most severe of the 3 categories. Now, what determines the severity of these particular disorders? Well, it's the presence of symptoms, okay? In one particular article that I read, the author said, to start the whole process, you just ask a simple question. Are you depressed? And if the answer is yes, okay, if the answer is yes, or the patient feels that perhaps, yes, I think I am dealing with depression, the next step is to gauge the presence of symptoms, or in medical terms, they refer to it as neurovegetative symptoms, okay? But for simplicity, we'll just call them symptoms. So this is what differentiates the severity of dysthymic disorder, minor depressive disorder, and major depressive disorder, okay? So let's flip over to the different symptoms of depression. Based on my research, I've identified 8 primary symptoms of depression that medical professionals look for when kind of gauging depression severity in patients. The first one being sleep disorder. Either you're sleeping too much or you're not sleeping enough, right? Maybe your ailments or your issues that you're dealing with, maybe it's causing you're so fatigued, you're just sleeping all the time, all morning, all day, all evening. Or maybe it goes the other way and you're not getting enough sleep, or you're feeling sleep deprived because you're staying awake at night and you're worried and so forth. Number 2, interest deficit. Do you feel withdrawn from doing fun activities? When you get invited to go out and do something with friends, do you often decline because you feel anxious about going out there. You just don't feel like you can be a part of something like that. 3 is guilt, and subcomponents of guilt are worthlessness, hopelessness, and regret. These are things that can fuel guilt, and combined they can be very damaging in terms of the presence of symptoms. When you feel guilt about something, it's on your mind and it turns your stomach and you feel terrible about it. You may feel worthless as a result of that incident or whatever it is that triggered your guilt. You might feel hopeless that you'll never get past it. And you feel a tremendous amount of regret for the choices that you made that triggered this guilt in the first place. Number 4, energy deficit. Do you feel like tired and you just don't have enough energy to go and do stuff? You just fatigue. Number 5, concentration deficit. Do you have a hard time concentrating on simple tasks? Do you get mixed up when doing something? Do you take the milk and put it in the cupboard as opposed to the fridge because your mind is just overwhelmed and you can't concentrate on just the simplest tasks? Or even worse, if you're at work, all right? If you're at work and you just can't focus on the screen, and this was something I can certainly relate to. I remember times sitting in front of my screen and just being automatically hit with an anxiety attack, and would get up and leave. I have to go. I have to remove myself from there because I just can't concentrate on my work task. Number 6, appetite disorder. As a result of these depression-induced issues that you're feeling, is it causing you to eat too much? Are you eating too much all the time and perhaps gaining weight as a result, or are you not eating enough, right? You feel so much guilt and regret and so forth that it just turns your stomach, and you just can't seem to bring yourself to eat anything, right? Number 7, this is referred to as psychomotor retardation or agitation. And the psychomotor retardation, it's kind of like that slowness in your motor skills, right? When you're in that dark place, when you're overwhelmed, you might be like really slow in your movement. You might be looking down at the ground all the time. You might be walking like really slow and in just almost like a zombie state, so to speak. Like it's just like you're forcing yourself to take one step after the other. Or the other side of it might be agitation. Maybe you're just easily agitated because you're just being affected by these symptoms that it's causing you don't have a lot of patience, and you're easily irked by just the littlest things, right? And finally, symptom number 8 is suicidality. Are you thinking about suicide? This doesn't mean that you are going to do the unthinkable. It means that you're entertaining it. It means that you're fantasizing about it. It means that you think about it as a way out of your depressive episode that you're having. So anytime you even think about the concept of suicide is no matter how far-fetched it might actually feel, but the minute you entertain it, then you are dealing with the symptom of suicidality. So now that we've discussed the 3 categories of depression, from lowest severity to highest severity, and introduced the 8 primary symptoms of depression, the next step for medical professionals when asked that initial question, are you depressed? And if the patient comes back and says yes, or I think so, next they got to figure out, okay, what is the severity that where are you at in this depressive episode? Are you dealing with something that's relatively minor, or are you in a terrible state at the moment? Are you in a concerning state at the moment? And in order to determine that, to measure it, what medical professionals will do will kind of get a sense and gauge the presence of these neurovegetative symptoms and just how many of these symptoms is this person dealing with. So based on my research, there's a few thresholds that are meant to determine the severity of depression based on the presence of these particular symptoms in a patient. So for example, if we look at dysthymic disorder, the rule of thumb is the patient has to be dealing with 2 out of the 6 symptoms that are denoted with an asterisk for at least 2 years. Which means, if we flip over here and identify the symptoms with the blue asterisk, i.e. sleep disorder, worthlessness, hopelessness, energy deficit, concentration deficit, and appetite disorder. So to meet the condition of dysthymic disorder or low severity of depression, the patient would have to experience 2 out of these 6 symptoms. But notice, suicidality is not part of that list. Okay, obviously, if you are entertaining fantasies of suicide as a result of your disorder, this is not a mild case of depression. So in addition to experiencing 4 out of these 8 symptoms, the patient also experiences energy deficit as one of its primary symptoms, denoted here by the red asterisks. So you can appreciate that if you're a person who's dealing with 4 or more of these symptoms for an extended period of time, i.e. for at least 2 weeks straight, you're not in a very good place mentally. So what about minor depressive disorder that sits between the 2 severities of depression? Well, minor depressive disorder is characterized more so by the presence of cognitive symptoms such as sadness or anxiousness, perhaps pessimism. These are just some of the cognitive symptoms that are present in a patient to meet the condition of minor depressive disorder. Now, with that said, there is a bit of overlap. There is some presence of neurovegetative symptoms, i.e., some of these 8 primary symptoms that would meet the condition for minor depression, okay? And these are identified by the green asterisks, okay? So the green asterisks over here. So in addition to cognitive symptoms, the patient also deals with some primary symptoms such as sleep disorder, interest deficit, concentration deficit, and psychomotor retardation or agitation is the primary symptoms. Thank you for watching. I hope you got something out of today's video. I just wanted to mention that much of the content on my channel is inspired by my self-help book entitled A Deep Well Perspective for Healing in Depression, introducing 7 action steps to overcoming depressive symptoms. You can find it on Amazon, and I've provided a link to my book in the description box below. Check it out. And remember, on this channel, there is hope always.